Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news show discussion. So, we'll be discussing all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and then have a talk about United, the club it is. In today's show, we can talk about Ratcliffe's new stadium plans, but I might do a video on that. We'll have to wait and see. Let me know if you want to see that. We're going to talk about Man United's new transfer approach, including data. Surprise new approach for transfer targets, intending on using data a lot. Who are like the genuine transfer targets that we can trust? Because we know that the sporting director's not in place yet. So can we trust this transfer news? But one thing we do know this summer is that United want to sell players. They need FFP, they need to sell players. And there could be some surprise sales. Now, one that's probably likely to be sold with 1 year left on his contract, and the fact that it'd be pure FFP profit, is, of course, Greenwood. Another one that could be rumoured to be sold could be someone like Rashford if PSG came in with the big bucks. But for now, Rashford is staying at United and not going anywhere. Anthony is one that could be sold if there's any offers that come in, which feels unlikely. Sancho is one that they actively want to sell. I know that. Lindelof is one that's expected to be sold. But a player that is actually being rather watched, and this was a little bit of exclusive insight I got, which is kind of useless information if I'm going to be completely honest with you, because I know this player will not go anywhere and will not leave Manchester United. But I got a bit of insight that there's a lot of clubs really interested in Bruno Fernandes, and if United don't qualify for the Champions League next season, might try and test the waters. We obviously know Saudi Arabia have got a genuine interest, but we're talking like a Bayern Munich, some other big clubs. Now, I know that Bruno loves United, commits to United, and I don't think he'd ever leave United. He's turned down some mad offers from Saudi Arabia, but we will get into that info. But the first story coming out, and the only real story to really keep an eye on at the moment, because it's the only recent story, is talks about Eriksen having secret talks about leaving Manchester United this week. And I actually almost did something awful. I wasn't thinking, and I wrote in the title, Eric set to leave United this week, and I was about to go live. And then I just realised a load of people would have joined the live stream thinking Ten Hag's leaving this week, and I would have been like, oh no. For some reason, I wrote Eric may be leaving this week instead of Eriksen. But it's been reported that Eriksen's having secret talks with Turkey and could leave Manchester United this month. So I want to get into that story, give you my thoughts on it, if I think it's true, if I think it's not true. It's straight off the bat, don't think he's going to go anywhere, because I don't think Ten Hag wants to let anyone else go because of depth and injuries that we've had, and he likes Eriksen. But I do want to dive into this story. Shivang, if that's how you say her name, sorry if that's wrong, says I feel bad for Mason Mount. I do as well. The injuries haven't been good for Mason Mount. He is expected back soon. I've got a bit of an injury update on him, which I will get into. So let me just take a quick bit of water, and then I will dive into the news, and I'll dive into the comments. There was news, someone just said, Alice, there was news from Jay Burt of The Telegraph on the weekend that PSG have no interest in signing Rashford, just wanted to let everyone know. Yeah, there's mixed reports, because some sources are saying Rashford's seen as an Mbappe replacement, and another source is coming out saying, oh, PSG don't see anything in Rashford. I don't think anyone really is going to have any idea of what's going to happen until nearer the time. Now, of course, first things first, when I see this report come out, I see source, Sun. If the source is the mirror, if the source is the sun, if the source is the star, the source probably stinks. It's probably ketchup. But this is not, the Sun isn't the first source to report this. They are claiming Christian Eriksen's time at Manchester United could come to an end this week, with reports in Turkey claiming he's held secret talks about a move to Galatasaray. Now, another source to take with a huge pinch of salt is sources in Turkey. They're nice if you want to eat them, but they're not nice when it comes to football news. Turkish sources love to push news narratives in their media for clicks. I will say that. Could Eriksen leave Manchester United next week? Yes. Could Eriksen be having secret talks with Galatasaray? Yes. Will Ten Hag let Eriksen leave? I highly doubt it. Will Eriksen be allowed to leave? I highly doubt it. Yes, INEOS want to sell players, FFP. Yes, Eriksen is one that they will look to sell in the summer. But considering how short we've been in midfielders with Mason Mount's injury record, I'd be surprised if Ten Hag lets Eriksen go when you've already let Meshby go. I know Mount is coming back. I know that McTominay is in the squad, Amrabat's in the squad, Casemiro's in the squad, Maino's in the squad. I wouldn't have too much of an issue if Eriksen went. I wouldn't, okay? I like Eriksen, and Eriksen's very good in those slow-paced games where you're going to have a lot of possession, you need to control it. In possession, in slower-paced games, Eriksen's good. out of possession, he struggles. I have no issue with Eriksen. I don't mind him coming on in a game where we're not controlling the game. We need to slow down the tempo, dictate the game, and there's not a lot of outwork possession to do, because Eriksen is very good in those kind of games. Eriksen will be very good in a game against the Sheffield United, for example. But Eriksen's not the kind of guy you want to play against Tottenham Hotspur, for example, someone who brings energy. So I wouldn't be ultimately bothered, in all honesty, if Eriksen left Manchester United, if we did sell him to Galatasaray for a fee, because I think he needs to go in the summer. Are there players I'd sell before Eriksen? Yes. But would I say Eriksen doesn't have the legs to take us to the top level? Yes. And that's how I feel on Eriksen. I don't think Ten Hag will let Eriksen go. I don't think Ten Hag will want to let Eriksen go. But I wouldn't be ultimately fussed depending on the fee. But it is the sun, so I'm not super reliable. I'd like Erik Ten Hag to try Eriksen to 10 later matches, but Ten Hag keeps using as an 8. I agree with Alex on this. Eriksen is a 10. If we want to rest Bruno, I want to see what Eriksen can do. Obviously, Bruno understandably starts every game, but if you need to rotate Bruno, play Eriksen in the 10 role. It'd be interesting to see what Eriksen can do, what Eriksen can add to Manchester United. I most definitely agree. But yeah, Ten Hag's very much stuck with Eriksen. He sees Eriksen in this role. He sees Mount in this role. He doesn't seem interested in really trying or considering any other roles as well. I do hope the connection's all right, guys. Do let me know if there's any problems with that as well. We're just scrolling through the chat. I'd sell Rashford, Bruno, Casemiro, and build a team around Martinez, Maino, Garnacho, and Højlund. What we will be talking about later in this video, who you'd build a team around. I mean, I wouldn't sell Rashford and Bruno. I know that people want them sold, but I think there's about 10 players that need to go out of the club before you consider Rashford and Bruno. Rashford, if big bid comes in and form doesn't pick up, understandable. But Rashford and Bruno are far from the problem in this team, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't like Rashford and Bruno, but they've contributed to about 62% of our goals. I think we're a worse team without Rashford and Bruno. I don't think we'd be much of a worse team without Lindelof and Antony, if you want my honest opinion there as well. Interesting news coming out about Enzo Fernandes. Talking of Fernandes, different Fernandes wanting to leave Chelsea, even though he's on like a 10-year bloody contract. Yeah, Chelsea. I mean, obviously we're here to talk about Manchester United, but Chelsea in the mud. There's a lot of players at Chelsea regretting being at Chelsea, wanting moves, and they're on these 8, 9-year, 10-year long contracts. Lots of problems. Chelsea don't even have the money with FFP to sack Pochettino. I mean, I tell you what. Being a Man United fan is miserable, but being a Chelsea fan right now could be even worse because Chelsea fans have been spoiled. So, yeah, Enzo Fernandes signed an 8.5-year contract at Chelsea, so it's basically a 9-year contract. But didn't his contract get extended? Didn't Enzo Fernandes' contract get extended? Yeah, Enzo Fernandes will be at contract doesn't expend until 2032. So that guy is trapped at Chelsea, isn't it, as well? I'm really curious the type of striker we sign in the summer for depth. Do you know what? I want to get into the next news story in a second, but the one area I'm really curious about is striker. That's the one area I'm really curious about. I know midfielders we're looking at Fofana, maybe Thuram, maybe Amadou Onana, maybe Max Weaver type. There's been links to people like Andre Fluminense as well, João Neves, more technical players. But I know ultimately it's a 6/8 hybrid. We know centre-back, they want someone that can do the Martinez role, but they also want someone that's going to be a long-term successor to Varane, that's a bit better in possession, which is Todibo, Silva. We know that Branthwaite is another one being linked in terms of a Maguire replacement. Inacio, we know the wingers being linked to the Elise, and it seems to be the most liked. We know Nico Williams has been linked, Neto's been linked. But striker, we've not really been linked to any strikers other than Marcus Leonardo, who would have been great, but obviously he was going to go to Benfica. It's too smart for signing to United. We were linked to Taremi late in the last transfer window. That didn't happen. The Girassi links, as far as I'm aware, was kind of made up for clicks to see if they could have. It was Girassi's agent trying to invite interest. The Timo Werner loan interest was genuine, but United didn't think he was worth the money with FFP. So maybe they would like a Werner striker, someone that's quick, that can make runs in behind, that could not just be a striker, but play across the front three, but ultimately still see Højlund as the number one. I mean, I tell you this now, I think he would have been good for United. And I think he's been all right at Liverpool is Cody Gakpo. He can play centre forward, he can play left, he can play right. He's the kind of guy that if Højlund's not around, you bring Gakpo in. He's kind of that backup for Nunez and Shota. And it's a shame because we could have got Cody Gakpo for about £30 million and we spent 85 million on Antony. Now, I don't think Cody Gakpo's been amazing at Liverpool, but he's better than Antony, and he would have the flexibility and physicality to fill in the places. And I think Ten Hag would kind of want to sort of play it similar to that as well. Looking forward to your Mason Mount update, Alice. Well, shall I get into that, actually? Let me get into that. Let me get into the latest on Mason Mount. It's nothing super, what's the word? Nothing that provides super clarity. But if you don't know who Insider United 1 is on Twitter, get to know him. Insider United 1 is a guy that just every time he tweets, you get the Athletic say the same thing about 2 days later. Told everyone Wan-Bissaka was injured, confirmed 2 days later, told everyone. He tells you everything you need to know on injuries, and he's been very accurate with that information. I don't think he said something and it not turned out to be true. And he is saying that Mason Mount is close to returning to action for Manchester United. He's confirmed that Mason Mount is close. He didn't clarify how close, but there is a feeling that he will be back in a number of weeks. The Mason Mount and Malacia, it's like they're sort of the 2 injured guys where there's not been too much information. There's not been too much clarity as well. But there is a feeling that Mason Mount is close to return to United. He's obviously been spotted in training, and that seems to be the case. Don't think he'll be available for the next 1 or 2 matches, but there was a suggestion that it could be about 2 weeks away from getting on the bench, which would be a real positive, and hopefully that is the case as well. Please do smash the like button. Please do subscribe down below if you're new. Share the video and all of that stuff. We've got lots and lots to dive into in today's show. Big up everybody in the chat. The young players can't do it all by themselves. It takes the likes of Casemiro and Bruno to make a team tick 100%. And as Omar Barada said, he wants to. He when he builds a team, it's young players they can develop into superstars, players in their prime, and experienced players. You need a mixture of young players that are getting into their prime, players in their prime as superstars. You've got your youth in Garnacho and Maino Højlund, which you're going to develop into superstars. You've got Luke Shaw. You've got Marcus Rashford. You've got Bruno Fernandes in their prime. And then you've got the experience of Casemiro and Rafael Varane. And that is the squad that you want. And eventually, Casemiro and Rafael Varane, they knock on a bit. Jean-Claude Todibo comes in. Maybe Fofana of Monaco comes in for Casemiro. Not that he's probably an ideal Casemiro replacement, but you see where I'm sort of headed. I think INEOS' approach will be a few young players to turn into superstars, which is what City is sort of doing with their recent signing of, was it Savio? A lot of their signings, they're going to sign some players that may be 23, 24, sort of entering their prime so that we can develop into their prime. And they might sign a few players in their prime, and they might sign a few experienced players. Joshua Kimmich was one linked to Manchester United today, which I don't think would be a bad signing, although I want to see mostly players aged 20 to 25 signed from teams for decent fees with great attitudes that can play the way that we want to play and suit the system. But it does seem to be sort of a more youthful, positive direction as well. Someone said Bruno has a terrible attitude when Man United are getting walloped and Rashford out on the lash. That wouldn't inspire me as a young player. I personally disagree. Look, Rashford messed up, and it's now about how Rashford responds on the pitch. Bruno Fernandes, I personally would never question his attitude towards United. I think he can whinge, he can moan, he can be frustrating. But I think he's probably one of the hardest working players at United that gives a damn and gives 100%. Yes, he wins. Yes, he moans. Sometimes I wish just get on with it, Bruno. You're going to get yourself a silly yellow card. But yeah, for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with Bruno's attitude. I think Rashford's not been in the right place on and off the pitch at the moment. You can tell by his body language and his lack of work rate. But I wouldn't fault Bruno's attitude personally myself. PSG want Leao, not Rashford. Apparently, Leao doesn't want to go to PSG. Leao wants to go to La Liga or the Premier League. There was a report that Leao sees himself playing in the Premier La Liga. No idea when Now plays other than Bruno rotation. He's not an obvious upgrade elsewhere. I agree. I think games where United would expect to have a lot of the ball, I think Ten Hag's plan is Maino, Mount, Bruno. Games where United are going to have less of the ball, I think it's Casemiro, Maino, Bruno, and then potentially Mount rotates with Bruno, or Bruno goes out wide or Mount goes out wide, which I don't personally like. I like fast wingers. I like to play the best players in a natural position. I think Mount will do a mixture of playing next to Bruno and being covered for Bruno, but the thing is Bruno's never injured. Touch wood. So yeah. Anyway, for me, I think the Mason Mount was an interesting signing. I think had we got him on a free, fair enough. But to spend such a large amount to transfer the budget on a guy where you don't really still know what his role is a bit, okay. I think interestingly, his role is sort of the Eriksen role, and I understand that he's a massive upgrade on Eriksen out of possession in terms of ground coverage, in terms of pressing, which is something the team lacks. And if you want to play the way Ten Hag wants to play, you're going to need that from Mount. But because Kobbie Mainoo is not an out-and-out 6, you do look at the balance of that and think, does that work? That's what I look at. Is the balance there? Does it work? And And that's where the big questions are going to be as well. More essential than ever that both Mainoo and Casemiro play now. Leach out for a while. Defence needs good protection. I agree, although the defence hasn't been getting good protection, even with Casemiro and Mainoo in there. I mean, the amount of last-ditch tackles to lower to make. Maguire and Martinez had to take a really, really aggressive approach in their pressing and play quite high up. And Maguire almost got caught out there, and then Delot made a fantastic block. The midfield is still being played through, and that's not because Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro have been bad. It's because of the setup. The way that Ten Hag sets up our rest defence structure means it's quite easy to play for us because the attack, other than Højlund, don't really commit to the press. The midfield half to commit to the press, and then there's sort of spaces left in between. And Casemiro doesn't have the ground coverage, and I do think that actually it's quite easy to play through Manchester United's midfield as well. You all moan when Maguire was captain and didn't open his mouth to complain. Now Bruno challenges Etchings, you call him moaning. At least he shows passion and wants to win the game. I agree. I think Bruno moans and whinges a lot, but actually a lot of the time it's passion. He wants to win the game. It's because he gives a damn. I'm not comparing him to Roy Keane, but he's got that. I remember this, and I still remember this day, and I was seething with Maguire. But Martial got sent off versus Spurs. Lamela did that to Martial, and Martial did that back. And bear in mind, this VAR looked at it, and VAR thought, we'll send Martial off and we'll not touch Lamela, even when Lamela initiated it. Martial got sent off, and Rashford was there shouting in the ref's face. Everyone was there shouting in the ref's face, and Maguire just stood there like, what's going on? What's going on? And then Maguire was saying, calm down, Rashford. VAR's there. VAR have made a decision. They've obviously seen it. Calm down, Rashford. Maguire was I get telling your players to calm down. He's want to get Rashford sent off. But Martial had been sent off for this absolute farce. And Maguire was just like, oh, they've made their decision. What can we do? Well, to be honest, you can't do anything. So technically, in principle, Maguire's right. But the lack of sort of passion he showed, yeah, I completely agree. It was crazy as well. I really wouldn't have anyone over Bruno as captain right now. Leach potentially in football, but bad luck in future, but bad luck with availability. Yeah. I see a lot of people saying strip Bruno of captaincy, but who would you give captaincy to? Anana? Well, he's not good or consistent enough. Diego Dalot, I mean, look, he's working really hard. I think he's got a good mentality, but it's a bit early on to give Dalot captaincy, isn't it? Rafa Varane, yeah, he's great, but is he available enough of his injuries? And he's probably going to leave soon. Maguire, well, he's been there, done that. Martinez, you'd give it to him if he was around, but he's not around. Luke Shaw, potentially, but interestingly, Ollie, and I don't know if this is true, but if anyone else knows any more insight on this, do let me know in the chat. But apparently Ollie offered Luke Shaw captaincy and he said no. I read that somewhere, but I don't know where that came from. Luke Shaw, potentially in there, but again, availability issues. Casemiro looks like he'll be phased out in the next year. So, and then you look at Mainoo, well, he's too young to be captain, as brilliant as he is. McTominay, I mean, if McTominay was good, he's a captain. Personality-wise, McTominay's a captain, but he's not good enough to start. Amrabat's going to go. Mason Mount's just got here. You have to say, well, Bruno's around. Bruno's one of our best players. Bruno's one of our more experienced players. You look at Bruno. Would you give it to Rashford after what's been going on? Probably not. Apparently, Rashford was another player that turned down the idea of being captain. Højlund's too young. Garnacho's too young. And let's be honest, is anyone here going to seriously think about giving Anthony the captain's armband? I don't think we even need to have that discussion. And I want to give Martial captaincy? Absolutely not. So I do think when you look at United, well, other than Martinez, and Martinez is not around, there's no one that's really a serious contender for captaincy ahead of Bruno Fernandes as well. People laugh, but McTominay deserves it the most. He lives for the club, and I never see his head go down. The problem is he doesn't always start. If McTominay was good enough to start, he would deserve it. But the thing about McTominay is his best role was coming off the bench because he's not good enough in possession and not good enough at controlling games for you to start him. But he's very good when the game state sort of shifts a bit, when maybe United are a goal ahead and there's a bit more space behind for him to make those runs. He's very good as a superstar because McTominay's strengths are making runs when spaces open up a bit more, which is which happens towards the end of the game, particularly if we're winning, set pieces, and giving a different dynamic for defenders to think about. So even if we're losing, they've now got another physical player to think about. For me, McTominay isn't going to have to start, but I think he's quite a good option off the bench. So yeah, personality-wise, McTominay has it all, but I think ability-wise, he couldn't be captain as well. People would say Henderson and Milner are not good enough players, and you wouldn't want to sign. I think McTominay thrives in a Fergie team. I mean, he's a workhorse, but I'm not sure. I mean, Fergie made Cleverley and Anderson midfield duo win the league, so you probably Fergie could have done miracles with McTominay, to be honest. Casemiro is great, but doesn't speak English. He speaks a little bit of English, but not a lot as well. Captain is still a bit much. Scott loves the club, but not a leader, says Alex as well. Club captain doesn't have to start all the time. Would give it to Scott over most others, says what was your name? Dakarin. Sorry if I said your name wrong. I really like mentality-wise, yeah. Ollie offered Rashford captaincy, who turned it down. I believe Luke Shaw was the other player as well, but I'm not sure. VAR is rubbish. VAR is rubbish, man. Do you know what is bad about VAR is just the consistency. Like the penalty Wolves got, but Chelsea didn't get a penalty by the same ref the day before for something way worse as well. It's absolutely crazy. Part exchange Mel back to Chelsea for Enzo Fernandes. Well, I generally thought Enzo Fernandes would have been a really good signing for United, but we've got Mason Mount now, and he wouldn't. Sorry, not Mason Mount. We've got Maino now. I like Enzo Fernandes. I think it's a really good player in Enzo Fernandes, but he's the type of guy you want to play with a DM, not as a DM, if you get what I'm saying with that. But let's dive into some more news. Let's dive into some more information. Let's dive into some more stories, because I haven't actually really got into the news in today's live stream, and we want to talk about Manchester United's newfound approach in the transfer window. What is Manchester United's new plan? What is Manchester United's new approach in the transfer window set to be? And this is a story about Manchester United's interest in data when it comes to transfer planning. And while I've said in multiple videos, I think any information that does come out on transfer news right now, you do have to just say, I'm going to take that with a big pinch of salt, because we haven't got the sporting director in. There's no decisions been made on Ten yet, so how can we know the transfer plan? But I think in terms of approach to the transfer window, it can be taken a little bit more seriously than targets. And this first story said this. It was said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his INEOS and team intend to give data a prominent role in Manchester United's revamped recruitment operation after being impressed in meetings with the club's in-house team of a number of crunchers. It was said that Ratcliffe intends to oversee a major overhaul of football operations, potentially creating a crop of new executive roles and shaking up the way transfer decisions are done. So the first part of the story talks about United's new approach to go for data when it comes into recruitment and stuff. Manchester United want to overhaul the full footballing operations and actually create new roles. Now, when The Athletic did an expose on the issues going in at Manchester United, one of the things that was mentioned is that actually, the Darren Fletchers, the John Murters, the Richard Arnolds don't know sort of the definities within their role in terms of who makes the final decision and who does this and who does that. And it does seem like INEOS will want to come in and bring those kind of defined roles to Manchester United. It was also said that INEOS wants to bring into decision-making at United data. A source said that data is part of the DNA at INEOS, so it's no surprise it's going to be a big part of what they do at United. And there has been a lot of reports and suggestions saying that United are going to go for a data-driven approach. And interestingly, on that data-driven approach, apparently they've been looking at English players. There's obviously a report that they want to rebuild an English core at Manchester United. And I actually believe this report, because I've said multiple times, take all the transfer stories with a pinch of salt, but I actually believe this report. And this is that Jared Branthwaite and Elise are those being looked at. It was said that Everton centre-back Jared Branthwaite and Crystal Palace winger Michael Elise are on United's radar. I believe three players that United are generally interested in and generally looking at are Elise, Branthwaite and Todibo. I think there's a genuine interest in all three of those players. I don't necessarily can say, is that going to happen? Is that not going to happen? Because I don't think anyone knows the finer details that's going to happen when it comes to transfers this and transfers that. But ultimately, I think what INEOS are looking at is English players, and obviously they've all Todibo because he's come from Nice. I wouldn't be surprised if those are players that United are looking at with some serious viewers saying, you know what, I'd be interested in signing that player. You know what, I'd be interested in bringing that player in. A player that at Manchester United that other clubs are interested in, I haven't shared the screen, is Mason Greenwood. I do want to talk about the Mason Greenwood news. And it was said that Mason Greenwood is on Atletico Madrid's shortlist for the summer. Now, I got some exclusive insight on Mason Greenwood about 2 weeks ago, and I actually did a video on this situation because I'm going to make this very clear. There's a lot of false and misinformation that comes out about Greenwood. Lots of false and misinformation. People know that if you talk about him, it gets clicks, it gets interactions. People want to know what's going on. There's a lot of stories coming out from the Sun on Greenwood that 99.9% of them aren't true. About Barcelona, there was a story that apparently Getafe bidded 40 million for Mason Greenwood. They didn't. Getafe couldn't pay 40 million for Greenwood. What I know on Mason Greenwood is this, and this is exclusive info I got, but it's also just using common sense. INEOS have not made a decision yet. INEOS, it feels more likely that he will leave United in the summer because INEOS know that there could be backlash. There was already chance. Whenever we play in the Premier League, there's chance about him, and he's not even playing for us. And INEOS know because he's young and because he's an academy player, it's a pure FFP profit, and FFP is the big problem at United. Greenwood, Mejbri are two players that are likely to be offloaded by INEOS because of FFP. But I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to say it again. INEOS have not made a decision. I see some Twitter accounts saying breaking news, INEOS want to build a team around Greenwood and see him as a 200 million player. Not true. Breaking news, Barcelona for Greenwood. Not true. But what is true is Atletico Madrid are in for Greenwood. I said this 2 weeks ago. The only link to Greenwood and transfers that is true is Atletico Madrid. Barcelona have shown no interest in Greenwood. Real Madrid have shown no interest in Greenwood. Getafe never made a 40 million bid for Greenwood. Atletico Madrid have been looking at Greenwood. Atletico Madrid are interested in Greenwood, but INEOS haven't decided if they're going to sell him or not. However, with FFP, with raising funds, and the potential backlash of bringing him back, it looks like they will wave more towards selling him, but a decision has not been made yet. I think they will sell him and the likes of Mejbri and a few other players to do what they can because they want to sign players in the summer, but FFP is massively holding us back. So it will be interesting to see. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if he was brought back. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he sold because it's a pure FFP profit, and FFP is a big issue if we want to spend in the summer as well. But I do think I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Atletico Madrid because I will say this, opinions aside on Mason Greenwood, I think he's an Atletico Madrid player. And I think that he would be suited to them. And I also think it would be better for him to play in Spain than play in England because he's a lot more protected and the media is a lot less focused on him in that sense in Spain. In England, if he comes back to Manchester United, he will be rinsed. When we play, there's already chance about him. He will be rinsed. He will not be welcome back to England. I think the best thing for him would be to play for Atletico Madrid. I think INEOS can sell and make a pure FFP profit, and I think he looks more like an Atletico Madrid player. So it'll be interesting to see how that advances. But as I've said, INEOS haven't made a decision on what they're going to do with him. I got told that. I see people putting out false information. Barca haven't looked at him. Real Madrid haven't looked at him. Atletico have looked at him. INEOS haven't made a decision, but they know they've got an FFP situation, and him and Mejbri and McTominay with 3 academy graduates that they think they can raise a lot of money by selling, and that will really give leeway with FFP. So I think he's probably edging more towards the selling as well. INEOS considering to spend money on rebuilding the stadium. Hope that's true. Guys, do you want to see a video on the new stadium plans later tonight? I could maybe use AI to actually give you a visualization of what it would look like and sort of paste sort of the script into AI and see what it comes up with. We could do something interesting. Do let me know as well. Elise's done nothing. Elise's talented but has done nothing in his career consistently and injury prone. I wouldn't say he was injury prone before this season. I'd say he's been mismanaged by Hodgson. I really like Elise, but he's going to be out for another 2 months because of how poor Roy Hodgson has managed his injuries. You're 3-0 down. The game is lost. Why are you risking Elise? Elise was on the bench because he was not fit enough to start, and you're 3-0 down. You were literally 3-0 down. Why bring on a winger that's, if you play, could risk injury when you're 3-0 down? The game's already lost. You're not going to turn that game around 4-3. You're 3-0. If you're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go, I get it. 3-0 down, the game was done. The game was out. The game was lost. So I do look at that and think, why? Why did he bring Elise on? Because now Elise's injured out for 2 months. And as much as I like Elise, I think, well, what are you going to do there as well? If we sell him, I could see MG ending up in the Premier League eventually. Potentially, yeah. I thought ultimately he will want to come back to England, but I think I can't see him, or if we sell him, coming back to England for a couple of years, just because I think he will be absolutely tortured, at least in the next year or two, if he came back as well. I'm excited for the January window. I think Højlund was our best signing. Højlund's proving to be a very good signing. I think with Højlund, we always knew it was a good signing. We always knew there was a good striker there. It was just the amount of money that we'd spent on him when we had such a limited budget to cover so much areas that you're thinking, wow, you've spent badly. But I always said I'm happy with Højlund. I think he has everything to become a top striker, and I think that he's showing that. I actually did a video yesterday talking about almost why I think Rasmus Højlund is the perfect striker for United. But I do want to get into news on a potential Bruno Fernandes exit at Manchester United. Rumours that Bruno Fernandes could leave United. Rumours of this, rumours of that. What is the latest on Bruno Fernandes' future again at Manchester United? And I keep sharing the wrong screen. Here we go. Is that up? Is that ready? So this is some reports on Bruno, and this isn't the first time this has been reported. But it said the Saudi Pro League side Al Hilal are preparing a potentially huge offer for Bruno Fernandes in the summer. However, Man United are confident Bruno will stay. Now, Saudi clubs actually already made 2 weeks ago. Some Saudi clubs went to Bruno with massive offers. Saudi want Bruno Fernandes. They went to him with massive offers. He turned it down. There's a feeling that Saudi would give a huge offer of Bruno Fernandes. There was one source saying that Saudi would pay 100 million plus to bring Bruno Fernandes to Saudi Arabia. But one, I don't know if that's true. Two, I think Manchester United wouldn't sell Bruno for 100 million pounds. I think he's that important to the club. I think they rate him that much. And three, I don't think Bruno has any plans of leaving United. Bruno chose United over Barcelona. Bruno Fernandes loves Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes, would he leave us for Real Madrid? Maybe, but Real Madrid have got Bellingham. They're not going to go for Bruno. Would Bruno leave us for any Premier League club? No. Would Bruno go to Barcelona? No. Would Bruno go to Bayern? They're interested in him? I doubt it because the Bundesliga is not that competitive. Bruno loves Manchester United. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think there's sorry, I misread something. I don't think he's going to go anywhere, but there is a lot of interest in Bruno. Apparently Bayern have an interest in Bruno Fernandes and would test the waters if, Man United don't get in the Champions League as well, and all of that as well. I'm just scrolling through the chat as well. Elise missed 13 games last year with a hamstring. Seems to be a reoccurring problem, Elise and hamstrings. Wouldn't go for Elise after another setback. Mount had injury season before. We brought him, same with Bailly. To be fair, lesson learned. You make a good point there as well. Elise couldn't last 30 minutes when there's no need to bust a gut. Stay away from that one. I love Elise, but I just don't want to go for another injury-prone player as well. 100%. Fernandes wants to play high-level football. I mean, look, I think Man United eventually will be playing high-level football again, and Bruno could be doing better than Manchester United, but I don't think he'll leave the club. I think he loves the club, and I think because we're such a big club, the only club bigger than us is Real Madrid, and I don't think they will want Bruno as well. Do you think Amrabat brought the stability in midfield like we expect? Well, he's not really been given the chance, and when he has played in midfield, he's been told to play this ridiculous role that doesn't get the best out of him. So to an extent, I think that Amrabat hasn't been as good as we hoped, but I also think that it's not totally Amrabat's fault. We expect better from Amrabat, but it's not totally his fault. Oh, interesting report coming out here, and not the first time we've been linked to this guy, but it's just been come out and said that Manchester United, and let's zoom in on that a little bit so you can see that better. Can you see that all right? Just come out here that Manchester United scouted Copenhagen winner Rooney Bargi in their 2-1 defeat against Brøndby on Monday, and he scored in that. Now, we're going to call him Rooney 2.0 because I probably completely messed up his second name. But he was the guy that came off against Copenhagen, scored against us. Manchester United have been looking at Rooney a little bit. I think he could be one to keep an eye on. One, he did. What's that whistling noise? Might be my heater. One, he did score against us, but two, he does look like a sort of young player that United would be interested in. So I think he's more of an attacking-minded midfielder. I'm not going to act like I know a lot about this player. I think he's more of an attacking-minded midfielder that can play up the top, can play up front, can play up the top. I think he's quite a versatile player. I think he's predominantly played right wing, but apparently he was an attacking midfielder. I'm not going to act like I know a lot about this guy, but I do know he played right wing against Manchester United, and that's the only time I've really watched him this season other than the Champions League. I think he's a right wing, but I did read somewhere he can play attacking midfield. But it'll be an interesting one to look at. Is he Højlund's best mate? I don't think so. Rooney 2.0, Rooney's back. He does look like a baller, and I think this could be one to watch. If I'm Manchester United, I'm looking to bring in two wingers. So they could bring in someone like Nico Williams, who can play left and right wing with experience, and they could bring someone like Rooney, and that's quite versatile and could play across the attack as someone that's young. We'll also be linked to another 18-year-old wonder kid, and this is another one from Palmeiras. I mean, they've got loads of them at the moment, but apparently we're monitoring Thales. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I watched Fluminense, and that's the only bit of South America. Fluminense is the only sort of Brazilian team I've really kept an eye on this season. So I'm not going to act like I know a lot about this player, and it could just be another one of those players that United get linked to. But he's 18 years of age. He's Brazilian, and he plays centre forward, and that is about as much as I can tell you. I could look up his stats quickly. He's got 8 goals and 1 assist this season in 25 games and 1,700 minutes, predominantly playing centre forward, but has played right wing. But very, very young. So, that could be one to watch for. I'm more familiar with Rooney. I probably preference Rooney, although this kid is more of a centre forward than a winger as well. Just look up his YouTube comp as well. Wirtz would be tempting as future Bruno replacement. Looks like a baller. I feel like he's going to go to Man City to replace De Bruyne. Every time there's a player that I'm like, this guy would be so good for United, where do they end up? Manchester bloody City. Every time. More interesting info on Rooney. Another source has come out linking us to Rooney 2.0. The Sun, so I don't get too excited with this one. But it was said Manchester United dispatched a scout to Portugal to watch Rooney in the Atlantic Ocean Cup. United will watch Rooney again on Friday in Copenhagen's next warm-up match against Molde, and also deploy scouts to both legs of their Champions League tie against Man City. His price tag is 17 million, and his father's a huge United fan. 17 million, to be honest, that could be a decent deal. You've got to look, Julian Alvarez was about 16 million, and look what he was developed into. I think if you get him along with like a Nico Williams or a Neto, someone with a bit more experience, that could, and you sell on Anthony, you sell on Sancho, that could be a smart answer to your wing problem. You bring in someone that is sort of that 21, 22 mark that's a lot better, and then maybe you have an 18-year-old that you can develop. But he does look like a really, really good player, this kid. I'm interested in him, but we'd have to definitely bring in a more experienced winger if we were going to bring him in as well. Very, very young is good. We need a broad signings, can be classed as homegrown. I think when they're under 21, they can be, can't they, as well? Why don't we scout in South America? We did in the past, but to be honest, it wasn't the best. We brought in people like Anderson. It does frustrate me that Ralph Rangnick literally named Julian Alvarez and said, go get him, you need a long-term striker. And the club ignored it. Same with Enzo Fernandes. There are some really good South American gems out there, but we just seem to ignore it. Every single time we seem to ignore it. 17 million, it looks quite good. Father being a United fan. I think as well, like the one thing that we United have is there's so many players out there that love Manchester United. PSG, people forget this. PSG offered Rasmus Højlund a lot higher wages. PSG wanted Rasmus Højlund and they offered him higher wages than we did. And Højlund said, no, I want Manchester United because he's a Manchester United fan. Barcelona wanted Bruno Fernandes. He picked United. Amrabat turned down everyone in the sun for Manchester United. Liverpool and Arsenal were seriously in for Mason Mount, and he made it clear his first choice was Manchester United. People underestimate the pool that United have. Gravenberch's first choice was United, and we said we can't afford you, so we went to Liverpool. Cody Gakpo's first choice was United. He found out we weren't going to go for him. He went to Liverpool. People forget that so many players out there live and dream Manchester United, and Rooney 2.0 could be another one of them. There's a lot of players out there that always wanted to come to Manchester United, play for Manchester United as well. Please do continue to hit the like buttons, guys, and of course subscribe down below for new if you do want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and more to get into as well. Lingard going to Seoul after heard 26 clubs wanted him. He left West Ham when doing well, chose Nottingham Forest, and now left to go to Seoul. Crazy, I think, once again. Lingard was one of those players that got ahead of himself. Lingard chose money over football. Lingard went to West Ham. He revived his career. He could have gone to West Ham and taken a wage cut. He stayed at United. Ollie did give him false promises. He went to West Ham and revived his career. He stayed at United, did nothing. He then snaked West Ham for Nottingham Forest because they offered him more money and was crap at Nottingham Forest. And then West Ham invited him to train back with them. He was about to sign a contract with West Ham. Then Saudi came calling. He snubbed West Ham again, went over to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia turned him down in the end. They thought that his intentions apparently weren't real, or he wanted too much money. I don't know if it was true. They take this with a pinch of salt. But apparently Saudi Arabia thought Lingard was asking for too much money. And then no one wanted him. And then he's ended up in Seoul. Jesse Lingard could have just gone to West Ham, revived his career. Moyes would have gotten the best out of him. West Ham attackers are doing well, and he could be a Premier League player right now, but he chose money. He got ahead of himself. He thought he was bigger and better than he was, and that's the curse of a lot of Man United players. They're too big for their boots. A lot of Manchester United players think they're better than they are, think they're bigger than they are. They get way too big for their boots, and they end up out of a club. Eric Bailly, Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard, and David De Gea were all sort of out of a club for almost a week. Earlier on, obviously, Pogba Juventus situation seems to be getting solved. Bailly obviously was kicked out of his club. And then Lingard and De Gea. So a lot of players at Manchester United that we can't sell. And even when they're a free agent, no one picks them up, because sometimes it's not just about us selling, but it's about the player that starts turning down clubs for money. And, we've built sort of a really negative culture at this club, which is something we need to massively work on and improve. The curse of Man United on Lingard. Lingard seems to befriend a lot of the wrong sort of people and seems to not have the best people around him. And I think that's the problem with Sancho. I think Sancho could take a similar path to Lingard if he's not careful. But I think Sancho's obviously gone to Dortmund, play football, revive his career like Lingard did when he went to West Ham. But I think Sancho had the wrong people around him giving him advice. Who the hell would say that? If I was Sancho's agent or best mate, I'd say, look, just effing apologise and go play football. You missed 4 months last season because of mental health. You play football. Antony won't be in that team for much longer with his performances. You'll get your chance, make up with the manager, prove him wrong, play football. But Sancho obviously had people around him that are telling him, yeah, don't play this and that. His United sort of careers, I'd assume, is over. Even if Ten goes, I'd assume it's somewhat over. It's just some players have the wrong people around them giving them advice, and that's worrying. And I think one thing that's interesting is that they were talking about Maino, Garnacho, Højlund at Manchester United. And when they were talking about Maino, Garnacho, Højlund at Manchester United, they were talking about the fact that they want to create a new culture where Maino, Garnacho and Højlund all have a group chat. And Maino, Garnacho and Højlund, they made sure that they've all sort of with their families, and they've got good supportive families around them and good people around them. Apparently one of the things United were keeping an eye on was to make sure that Maino, Garnacho and Højlund had really good people around them, people that were going to help them, people that were going to do this, people that were going to do that. And that does seem to be the case with them at the moment, which is a big positive, and which is quite good as well. What is going on here? So I was just reading something here. But I do think the new era of youth is looking a lot more positive and a lot more on the right track as well. Antony started well, Waterfield issues hindered until that gets sorted. To an extent, if Antony was a 40 million signing, what he offered last season wasn't too bad. It wasn't good enough, but if it was a 40 million signing, it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. Antony showed moments of promise last season, where I generally thought last season, for the most part, we did look like a better side when Antony played. I said that. I think last season, for the most part, United looked like a better team when Antony played. This season, I think that United, Antony's just been dreadful. I think last season last season Antony wasn't great, but I saw enough in Antony's performances to say there's not a bad player there, and I watched him at Ajax. This season, yeah, and Antony's been poor. I love listening to Alice's good point of view. Big up Ken in the chat as well. Off-field issues means you can only use 1 foot. Antony has to be sold. I agree. Omar Barada, you've got 1 to 2 years. If you don't prove yourself, you're out. That's the situation with Antony. The question is, how much money do United get? Can Antony be sold as well? I feel like our young players will be huge next season, potentially, yes. And not many Brazilian players succeed in England, which is true. Sancho's been an idiot for years and years. We need to evaluate mental behaviour before going forward. Sancho did have problems at other clubs. I think that's something we need to invest in as well. Rebuild the stadium, not a new stadium. Yeah, let me know in the chat. Would you tear down Old Trafford, or would you just rebuild the stadium because of the history and the iconicness of Old Trafford? It's such an iconic stadium. I almost feel like surely you can't get rid of Old Trafford. I know we need a new modern stadium, but is there a way that we can do up Old Trafford? Any half-decent games, agent tells Sancho to apologise near immediately. Any half-decent agent tells Sancho to apologise near immediately. Yeah. Sancho's got the wrong people around him as well. Wrong chat. Anana, terrible signing. It's going to hurt us going forward. I'm going to give Anana time. Next season's when we evaluate Anana. I thought he was good last game. I think he does. Look, Anana hasn't been good enough, but I think he gets way too much stick. People focus on him way too much as well. He's not been good enough, but I feel like he gets way too much. People say new Old Trafford, rebuild Old Trafford. I mean, realistically, it will be a lot easier to do a new Old Trafford, which is why it's looking more likely. But part of me is like, maybe you build a new Old Trafford next to Old Trafford and you keep the old Trafford for the women's and the youth team. But then is that possible? Like financially, it's such a difficult one as well. According to insiders, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has wasted little time since his 25% stake in Manchester United was announced. As a lifelong United fan, Ratcliffe is keen to leave a legacy and believes that a stadium worthy of one of the biggest clubs in the world is a huge part of that, is what's sort of been said on Ratcliffe and his plans as well. Scott McTominay has more goals than Odegaard this season. Interesting statistic coming out as well that I just saw on Twitter there as well. Harsh to keep the woman out of the new stadium. And Eric Ten Hag saw Anthony up close and still signed him unforgivable. Well, Anthony was actually all right at Ajax. That's the thing. That's the thing as well. But I mean, look, he had Kudus, he had Timber, he had Edson Alvarez, and he brought Anthony over. You do look at it like that and think, best of both worlds, rebuilds on the exact same spots as site. I think rebuild on the spot next to Old Trafford probably will be the better option. But listen, people, I'm going to wrap up today's live stream here. Please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Share the video and all of that stuff. I might do a video later tonight on sort of what a new Old Trafford would look like and what INEOS's Old Trafford could look like and stuff as well if you do want to see that. But thanks everyone for watching. See you next time. Bye.